Today's scripture is from the book on Matthew, chapter 25, verses 34 through 36. Enter, you who are blessed by my Father. Take what's coming to you in this kingdom. It's been ready for you since the world's foundation. And here's why. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, and you gave me a drink. I was homeless, and you gave me a room. I was shivering, and you gave me clothes. I was sick, and you stopped to visit. I was in prison, and you came to me.
Good morning, church. I'm grateful to be up here this morning. I truly am. In the play The Christians by Lucas Nath, thank you for all that attended when we produced it here back in November. If you didn't see the play, the protagonist is named Pastor Paul, and at the top of the play, he preaches this sermon to his megachurch. It's an evangelical megachurch. And he preaches this sermon that says, there is no hell, and basically all are welcome into the kingdom of heaven. And he tries to take the church into a new direction, but by the play's end, it has cost him everything. He has lost his church, he's practically lost his wife, and he's really questioning this voice of God that led him to do that in the beginning. He's got this monologue at the end, which is my favorite monologue, so I'm going to read it here. He says this: I believe what I believe because I know it's true. But why do I know it's true? It's a feeling. And where does that feeling come from? God. God put it there. But how do I know that God put it there? I know it's God because I believe God is there. But how do I know God is there? Because there's this feeling I feel inside me. But what if I was different? What if I had a different family and I was raised differently, not taken to church? But I was taken to church, and I had the family that I had, and they raised me to believe that feeling I feel is from God. But sometimes it's really hard to know which voice is God and which is just your own wishful self. This is a sermon about the voice of God and how do we hear the voice of God. This isn't a question that's reserved for pulpit or stage, but it really is the interior work of anyone that takes faith seriously. And being progressives, we're not afraid to ask the question. Is it a feeling we feel inside? Is it the echo of our ego? Is it audible? Or is it sensed more like a fragrance that we can't quite name? Does it move across time and space, arriving as pure mystery, this ineffable, unprovable, but yet somehow unmistakable? Is it Gollum and Smeagol from The Lord of the Rings? My precious. Yay, some Lord of the Rings fans. Well, here at the age of 54, I have my best answer yet to that question, and I share it today in faith. And it was a result of my clinical pastoral education, CPE, chaplaincy. And if you didn't know, for the last 4 months, I have been working as a chaplain at St. Joseph's Hospital. And when I started back in September, I had two things on my mind. One, I was excited because it's another step in my ordination process, and the steps so far have all been new and inspiring and life-filling for me. But if I'm being honest, the other thought was really, how the heck am I going to add 25 hours to my already busy work schedule? How am I going to juggle that? Even by my own standards, that was too much. Well, luckily, the first proved true. And this hearing of the voice of God began when I met my cohort of 9. We affectionately called ourselves the Fellowship of the Ring. I was Gimli. I don't know why I was Gimli. Maybe it was the beard. There was Sister Nur, in Arabic, light, ray of light. She was a devout, hijab-wearing Muslim woman. Told us on the first day that there's no physical contact between males and her, so there's no hugging, no shaking hands, but I always wanted to hug her, but she was fierce and had this beautiful Muslim faith that made me want to follow and be part of her community. Whenever I was tired, whenever I was overwhelmed, I'd always look to Sister Nur because she was finishing up her MDiv. She was completing her 4th unit of CPE, mother of 4, and still find time for these great home watching of the last season of Stranger Things. If I was tired, I knew Sister Nur was tired. I played this little fashion game in my head because every time her job was new and I kept keeping track going, is it ever going to be different? How big is her wardrobe? And we finally talked about it, and then she wore me her favorite one, which was beautiful with roses. There was Father Stud. When I say stud, because he was a Nigerian priest with chiseled athletic physique that just went, whoa, loved tennis, had this laugh that just brought joy to your soul. But joined the priesthood at an early age, and his whole life in some ways shaped by the magisterium and the Catholic Church being told where to go and what to do, and that always made me wonder. Towards the end, though, I saw the priest in him, the compassionate, loving priest. There was Pastor Petra. I'm using the female for Petras, because she was my rock. She was ordained as a Free Methodist, but now working in the American Baptist tradition, finishing up her 4th unit. Knew CPE like the back of her hand, and she was my rock, and I would go to for support. Emotionally available in a way that I've never seen another human being, and tears would just come freely to her just out of compassion and empathy. She was navigating the challenges of being a woman in ministry, the challenges of a traditional Asian upbringing and what that meant for her. James Dean. James Dean. I named him that because he had the most gorgeous coiffed hair that was just perfect. 3 children, one of them a thespian, hard-working. He was a little bit my progressive brother in the group. His drive and ambition just resonated with me. I'm convinced that one day he's going to be CEO of a hospital. And a wonderful, wonderful man. Dr. Pickleball, ordained in the Southern Baptist tradition, Korean. Was a widower but remarried, but lost his wife. And that experience shaped him, led to kind of a journey around the globe. And that grief was part of who he was. He was kind and gentle. I remember on the first day I was wearing my promise ring that John and I wear, and he made the assumption that I was married with a wife and asked about my wife, and then I had to say, well, he, not she. And that little awkwardness made me go, well, how this is going to unfold. But it came and went like that. Came to know him if I needed a pastor. Dr. Pickleball is who I would go to. His nickname there is because he is ruthless on the pickleball court. Our last day of class, we all went and played pickleball with each other. Then there was Truth Speaker, Keeper of the Light of Glory, and Bringer of Mirth. I use another Lord of the Rings title. He had Elvish written down on his, tattooed on his arm. Coming out of an evangelical tradition. Had a stutter which he named on the first day, saying, I'm not sure if this is going to be a hindrance when I'm in hospital rooms or with you, but it never was. It just made us lean in and pay closer attention. Had a sense of humor that was so funny and so quick and so witty. It was in a transitional period too, as he's had left an evangelical church and wrestling with faith, family members with LGBTQ experience. Brother Grace attends church at the Catholic Church, just 2 churches down on Alton. He was a little fish out of water because he didn't quite have the theological and background and pastoral background that most of us had. And, there's a lot of caring and sharing that goes on in CPE. And that caring and sharing at times proved challenging. He was shaped in some way by religious experience. He'd lost a son to cancer, which also shaped him. And he was my brother. And then there was me, little old gay me, UCC progressive. There we all are. That was our group. In this group, we came together under the leadership of the Reverend Glory Bautista, who's with us this morning. You have those teachers in life that you never forget, that shape you, that transform you, that leave a lasting impression on you. Reverend Glory is one of those, living out a passion and a dream that's changing this world, this wonderful sense of play. I remember on the first day, sat us down in our group and let us know that she was ordained in the Mennonite tradition, had discovered queer identity later, married to a wonderful man, wonderful son, but also wrestling with what does that mean now in her marriage today? And I think some of us were like, whoa, that was kind of personal. What's this all about? But what we quickly realized, though, is that was going to be how it was done. It was about building trust. Beginning from the beginning, leading by example. I remember in the first week we played a version of Never Have I Ever meets musical chairs. She changed Never Have I Ever to I'm cool and so are you. If, and you would say something, and if you had done the thing that was said, you had to find a new chair, and there was always one person out, had to go next. Let's play a quick version. Never have I ever, I'm cool and so are you if I've been a member of IUCC for 10 years or more. Raise your hand. I'm cool and so are you if I've watched the last season of Stranger Things. Okay, all right. I'm cool and so are you if pepperoni's your favorite topping. Yeah. That's the safe, wonderful, easy version, but that wasn't how things were going to be done. Let's play another round. I'm cool and so are you if you've known the pain of divorce. I'm cool and so are you if you know the struggles of addiction in yourself or in someone close. I'm cool and so are you if it's been a really hard week for you. With building trust, we were able to form our covenant. We called it the Covenant of Pink. We wrote it on a big piece of paper that hung on the wall the entire time we were there. We would respect each other. We would support one another. We would listen deeply. We would assume the goodwill of each other. We would engage in conflict. With courage and empathy, we would stay open to the present. And finally, pink. Pink was the outside-the-box symbol that came into existence because I couldn't master the little Post-it note thing that was taking place on Zoom, and the first one I managed to figure out happened to be pink. But it came to mean such more. Bold, vibrant, finding meaning out of the meaningless, and to always remember the playfulness of choices. Week after week, our covenant held. And I think all of us recognize there was something miraculous happening. This group that could not be more different were like the start of a joke. Into a bar walked a Nigerian priest, a queer Mennonite, a UCC progressive, and a Southern Baptist. We all recognized something special was happening because we were daring and willing to be authentic, to risk vulnerability, to open ourselves up over and over again and name what we were feeling. And I would be hard-pressed to give you an example of where I have seen that happen again in our normal circles of living, even here at church. It allowed us to say, when one of us was feeling some patriarchal influences, I'm hurt. It allowed us to say, when issues of race and caste came up, that I'm worried about my place in the group. For me, after a difficult encounter with a patient where my queer identity came up, I was able to say, I felt small, and I'm scared to tell you, my group, for fear that you might reject me. It was a miracle what was happening. And that brings me to my first point. God's voice speaks through others. When vulnerability and authenticity abound, God's voice can be heard. Our CPE classroom, a group marked by profound cultural, theological, and political difference, we found unity because we chose listening over fear and vulnerability over performance. We disagreed without breaking apart. No one needed to control the conversation because we trusted one another to be honest. God's voice emerged relationally through each other. Now, our covenant shaped the way we listen to one another, but I found another way of God speaking in the hospital room. And here, God was speaking as encounter, as atmosphere. Unlike the relational chorus of our cohort, that voice was expressed through this sacred exchange, learned not by discussion, but by shared human energy in the present moment. You see, in the hospital room, everything that defines us gets stripped away. Our titles, certainty, power, they just dissolve at the door because the great equalizer, I kept calling it, was that hospital gown tied in the back. You didn't know what a person's political beliefs were. You didn't know about their vocational backgrounds. But God was speaking to walk into that room and find a person in need and connect. A presence made manifest. In that space, the lines faded away. There was no Christian, there was no Muslim, liberal, traditional, all erased. And I found myself able to grieve with other human beings that may be completely different from me, theologically or politically. It did not matter when someone was grieving the loss of his brother and the loss of Charlie Kirk at the same time. It didn't matter when a man that some of us might call misogynistic was complaining about his wife at 60 years old wearing sexy clothing. And it didn't matter when a woman wanted to lay hands on me to pray for me, holding a faith that never in a million years would affirm my queer identity. In those moments, what mattered most was not agreement, but the raw human longing for care, for presence, grief to be witnessed without commentary or correction. The sacred space did not erase difference. It revealed what lied beneath it, and I came to recognize this once again as God speaking, not through certainty, not through sameness, but through shared vulnerability. God's voice emerging as encounter. There was one more way I began to experience God's voice. This one, wholly other, no pun intended, and the most mystical. It was an experience of God's voice as interruption, as an in-breaking, mystery breaking into the moment from both without and within. I noticed it first at St. Jude's Hospital. There was an honor walk. We were visiting and shadowing each other at St. Jude's. An honor walk is where a patient is on life support and has donated their organs. And they get transported from their room to the OR before their organs are ultimately harvested. And the staff and anybody who wants to, they announce it over the PA, they line the walls and are there as the hospital bed travels by. So we heard it on the PA, we all lined the halls and we're standing there, and people from all corners of the hospital lining up. And then I could see down the hall the bed come out of the hospital room, and as it traveled forward, they were playing the music. I can't remember the song on a cell phone. A chaplain walking behind with some other staff members with family members zooming in. And as it got closer and closer, there was a presence. I don't know how to explain it. When that patient passed by, silence thickened into something palpable, a sacred density that felt more than explained. Honestly, it was like, my first thought was, I just felt an angel walk by. I felt the wings of an angel pop by. And I was overwhelmed with emotion because I'd never experienced anything like it. I felt it for a second time in the ER. It was the first time I'm being a chaplain on call, which means you hold a cell phone and any emergencies or referrals come in, you pick up the phone and you go deal with it. And so it was my first time on call, and I got an emergency room call. Someone was on life support, the family was there, and they were requesting a chaplain. Scared and nervous, I went down. I walked into the room, and this family around them was grieving and in some ways wailing. And my first thought was, I just got to lay hands on this guy and begin to pray. So that's exactly what I did. And I was overcome with grief again myself, and I could hear them praying around me. And yet in that moment, right then and there, that same presence, it was like floating overhead. The same one from the honor walk. It wasn't deja vu, but recognition God was speaking again, some mystical grammar. Here I am at the end of my CPE journey. It's a moment to take stock. You know, before CPE, distraction was something I was dealing with. I just didn't talk about it. It was something I was living inside. Because the business of church is hard. Church logistics and budgets and facilities and who's doing the coffee hour and the frustrations and interpersonal conflicts. They were distracting me, and resentment a little bit was slipping into me. I was convinced that frustration was just realism. I was questioning a little bit the ordination journey and the ordination path, wondering, is this for me? But CPE has changed that. It's restored my capacity to notice what has always been speaking. In classrooms and hospital rooms alike, God was there. God was present. My ordination questions, they didn't disappear, but the tone shifted. CPE restored my faith by restoring my attention. Not a listening that resolves uncertainty, but one that's steady enough and to say honestly, I don't know anything, but I recognize a voice I didn't quite know before I journeyed this. In chaplaincy, we learned the 5 pastoral functions of a chaplain. Chaplains, we can heal, we can help guide, we can help sustain, we can help reconcile. We can also be prophetic. The prophetic voice of the chaplain is that one that's going to disrupt. It's the one willing to speak the truth to the room, calls a community back to attention, shakes us out of our ego and our dress up and our spiritual fatigue. It asks us to look and confront who is part of the kingdom. Returning quickly to the Christians, Pastor Paul says repeatedly throughout the play, I have a powerful urge to communicate with you, but I feel the distance between us insurmountable. He says it over and over again. Those words are daring those words to reach their destination. So here at the close this morning, I want to use the prophetic voice and say again, I have a powerful urge to communicate to you, but the distance between us at times feels insurmountable. We have trained ourselves to hear everything but the voice of God. We have grown deaf and blind in the business of our lives, mistaking motion for meaning, outrage for righteousness, ambition for calling, consumption for destiny. We bow before the idol of our own self-importance and call it devotion. We sprint towards comfort and call it sacrifice. We exhaust our bodies, thin our spirits, and numb our souls, climbing ladders of success while losing the ability to go into a room and connect with another human being and say, where is God speaking right now? The tragedy is not that God is silent. The tragedy is we have stopped listening. How do we hear the voice of God? The answer is hiding in plain sight. It's that billboard you pass on the highway every single day and don't take notice. It is the road less traveled. It remains as radical today as it was back then. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was in prison, and you came to visit. And the words most apropos here this morning, I was sick, and you looked after me. Praise be to God. Amen.